Again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bravo stream here live from the 6th Major Sweden in Gävle. We are getting ready to jump into our second match of the day. I've got Des with me here, of course, and this match is bound to be quite the interesting one. Not for the reasons that people would have expected initially, but after what we saw yesterday, now it's getting a lot more interesting. Isn't that right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, coming into the tournament, I was like, ooh, SANDBOX against DarkZero. Very static, chess-based team in DarkZero. SANDBOX a little more aggressive and fluid. I thought it'd be a really interesting clash of styles, but after DarkZero's start yesterday, 0-2 by the way, I'm suddenly coming into this very, very nervous for DarkZero. I really hope we'd see something special out of them. It's yet to happen. Hopefully this is the game. Fingers crossed.
Meanwhile, things have looked awesome for the SANDBOX roster as they have taken down two opponents, two of the strongest opponents inside of their group so far, and have not had an issue with either one of them. As we're going to see here, the roster that's brought to the table here for SANDBOX speaks for itself in the contributions that they were able to provide yesterday.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, looking down the line, you'll recognize a lot of these players. For those who look at it today, only just tuning in and like, who the bloody Nora are SANDBOX? They used to be known as Cloud9, then as Mantis, and of course now SANDBOX Gaming. Envy Taylor and Shile, the duo that we know in APAC North, can do so much damage together. Nova, the hard support player who has been really stepping up. And Static, who has been admittedly struggling a little bit on the entry, formerly known as Sweet Black. There's some work to be doing there, and Harper then also fills in sometimes around playing entry. It's quite a fluid team in terms of the roles that they can play, but Nova really is the backbone when you look at how they tend to play.
Absolutely the case. Once again, it's already been shown over the past couple of days of play. Definitive scorelines across the board for this team, and in a lot of ways starting to come out ahead in their group. This is one of the strongest performers from APAC so far at this tournament. To be fair though, that's not saying much because all of APAC, for the most part, is performing very well at this tournament. One of the strongest regions we've seen so far, possibly a new dynasty being set up alongside Latin America, who has already shown this to be their year here, winning 2 out of 3 of the tournaments so far, and of course looking to claim a third title with a great performance from FaZe, at least up until the beginning of today, as we just saw that previous match. So things are getting very, very interesting. But on the other side of the coin, we have DarkZero as well, and things have been rough, to say the least, here so far for DZ.
Yeah, very big question mark next to Eclipse there. Not sure why, because it's been a question mark applied to all 5 members of the team so far. 0 and 2, it has not been their strongest start to a competition. It's to be expected sometimes, right? These guys are still settling in with Canadian, moving over only just a few months ago before Stage 3. And in my opinion, a little bit of a clash of who's playing what role, right? NJR and Hyper kind of playing this second entry flex role. They're not quite sure who really holds that spot just yet. They're still figuring things out. But you know that give them a little bit of time, this roster could build to be something special. The big question on everyone's mind, is it a little bit too soon for them? Are we going to have to wait for SI or the Major after to really see this team come into its own? Because for many, it feels like this Major is just a little bit too soon for them.
Unfortunately, those role as well as responsibility issues that you were just talking about as well really translate into problems on the attacking side for DZ that has been shown to be a big problem inside of their first 2 games. Specifically, in the early and mid-round scenarios, the team is oftentimes finding themselves lost, unable to deal with or put enough appropriate pressure onto extended setups, leaving them grasping at straws for a last-second execute, which, again, credit to them, those last-minute executes, despite how haphazardly they're often put together, tends to go fairly well. So it's just about improving the early and mid rounds, and then we'll see a very good picture come together. We've got our map up on screen, and it's going to be an interesting one as we'll go down to Coastline.
That's down as DarkZero's worst map as well, and I don't know if this is a
stubbornly their worst map, because I think they like to play it a lot as well.
Yeah, I don't know about this one, Chief. Now, looking at it yesterday, SANDBOX played in this map, right? They played well, no complaints there. If you're looking at how it's going to fare off against for DarkZero today, there's a little bit of study they could have done on how SANDBOX played that game and bring some lessons from that game into today. But what I'm most nervous about is where DarkZero have struggled against teams in the NAL is getting hit hard on the flank in the mid to late round and stalling out, as you said. Now, a smaller map like Coastline, it's great. Very easy access to the sites, not a whole lot of map to clear. I'm just worried about the potential for flanks coming in from SANDBOX. So the big word for DarkZero in this game is discipline, especially in the mid-round.
Let's go ahead and see which team will come out on top, though. We're going live into the map now. It's Coastline between SANDBOX Gaming and DarkZero to see who can continue to excel inside of the group. First ban will be SANDBOX's. That'll mean the last ban as well. No surprises with the first ban as Thatcher. It's yeeted right out of this park yet again.
I'm curious to know if Thatcher is... In fact, there was one game yesterday where we saw a Decabian Lion ban. It was in Down1 Kia's second game, so we haven't seen a 100% ban rate for Thatcher, but I would wager it's definitely up there above 90. Jackal being taken away by DarkZero probably gives a lean towards some of their ideas for when they're on the defensive side. Wanting to get out there, be problematic on the roam, which would be a nice change in playstyle for sure. The next ban to come through, so two very different bans, dare I say, coming in, because now a choice remains for SANDBOX. Is it Valkyrie? Is it Mira that you ban away? I imagine it would be the Mira, which would leave Valkyrie on board. Okay, no. Valkyrie going off means that with the Mira now available, you'll see the kitchen defense likely be a little bit stronger. Penthouse and Theatre becomes a lot more defendable as well. Likelihood is we see all four sites come into the rotation for these teams.
We are going to see a slight reduction, of course, in utility mitigation because of the removal of Omai. But keep in mind, we still have both the Jaeger and Aruni to fulfill those roles, which shouldn't be too much of a problem for either DarkZero or SANDBOX to slot those in. The Jackal choice, I think, is fairly interesting. Normally, it's Nomad getting banned out if you try to pick an anti-roamer to eliminate, but Jackal can be just as proficient, if not more, inside of this map. So I can completely understand the reasons why you'd want to get rid of him, especially considering how prevalent roaming tends to be on this map, or even required in quite a few of the sites.
It's more prevention rather than the cure if you're bringing something like a Nomad, which has been taken away. They're not actively looking to push too hard into the roamers, I imagine, here, and direct to site is going to be the play. Get control of what you need, and don't worry otherwise. That Kaid 6-pick, by the way, likely a bait to say, hey, we're going Penthouse and Theatre, by the way, because yesterday when we saw it was Maverick and Thatcher banned away, I believe, what happened was Kaid was brought every single round for Penthouse and Theatre by at least one of the teams and used to lock down VIP. Here, of course, a different story as we are starting off on hookah and billiards, and indeed that Mira being brought along, that's going to be a problem potentially for DarkZero. It's another issue for them to work their way through.
Well, the first problem for DarkZero is that they're on the attacking sides. They're going to get thrown right into the deep end of the issues that they've already been faced with in previous games here. We'll see again how their potential research as well as VOD watching and whatever type of prep they've done last night is going to help to improve things here as they look to try and find their first victory today against SANDBOX here. Lots of drone presence just going to be stabilized early on here outside of hookah as they look to put the early pressure onto there. We've got the spawns out now for DZ, so let's take a look at where their opening gambit is going to shift towards here. We've got quite a few players working their way over towards hookah here. Might be seeing a little bit of early pressure as they try to stack up towards it, but more than likely just that opening bit of aggression as they try to open up some of these barricades and put that additional pressure on the utility more than anything at this early point.
I'd be really keen to see if later in the round DarkZero rotate over towards Aquaside, because we saw a couple of teams do this yesterday. I cast it twice yesterday. Trying to get C4s onto the default plant spot inside billiards was impossible every single time. I don't know why, but I swear you and I spoke about this, right?
We had one happen, yeah.
Yeah, and it looks horrific when you're trying to C4 the default planter, and it's been missed every time we've seen a team try to do it. It's either landed on the bomb, it's overshot and gone too far, it's been shot out, it has just been miserable. Nova almost being taken out. This is something that SANDBOX almost got punished for yesterday as well, was constantly running through this map and being cut up by, I believe, I want to say it was Furia, I forget which team it was against. Too many for me to remember. It wasn't Furia because they're in a different group, but there was a team, I think it was Team 1 actually, that kept on cutting them every time they ran across, and we kept saying they're dying here without any kind of response and being caught running through. Speaking of being caught running through, 2 or 3 players falling down. Pambazoo on the aggressive swing cannot stop Harper, who still finds himself behind bar. Static with yet another, and NJR is left alone down in Sunrise, facing off against the onslaught of 4 SANDBOX members, and they've been run out of Coastline nice and quick. Time for you to check out of this one, my friends.
Now, DZ just kind of throwing themselves at the site in a lot of ways. They were even at the hookah doorway, as we saw. And that led to an early kill for Nova. Yeah, he got traded back out, but we saw another player immediately take his place behind the mirror window, and just as much presence being able to stop the push from DarkZero, especially in areas like hookah as well, where once again, DarkZero forced the issue. While we did see a slight amount of success out of Eclipse's own push, the rest of the team, not so much. A great flick there from NJR, but ultimately will be for naught on the overall round, as SANDBOX has no problem shutting him down on a quick exchange after that.
Yeah, 3 people leaping out there into crossfires at the very end as well. Good composure being shown by SANDBOX in the 1v4, as you'd hopefully come to expect. But that round overall, DarkZero, they get a bit of control of Sunrise. They lose 2-3 members in very quick succession. And Pambazoo with this kind of Hail Mary solo play. You know, we spoke about this a bit yesterday for a few teams, saying, you know, they're pushing in one at a time. They're not pushing as a team and playing for trades. That was an example of taking a high-risk like play coming out from the side of DarkZero, something we don't normally associate them with. They are arguably one of the more calculating teams in North America that won't just swing you like someone like Oxygen might do. So that surprised me. But if it had worked, they break the bar control, suddenly the players around bars are isolated, and an Aqua Plant doesn't seem so crazy.
Stylistically, you're right, that was a very, very different round for overall what we've come to expect out of DZ. I'm actually kind of excited that we got that, even though ultimately it was a complete failure, because it does mean that DarkZero are aware of the issues inside of the early and mid-round. They're trying to change things up to try and fix that, or at minimum, change it up to throw their opponents off here. Curious to see what else is going to be thrown into the mix here throughout the rest of this game. Also, I'm sure that's not the only thing they were willing to try after a night of deliberation from the games yesterday.
Look at how much of a roam setup SANDBOX have got here, by the way. You're looking towards the Alibi, potential Roma, Thunderbird, Roma, Legion, Roma, Oryx, Roma. Even the Aruni wants those laser gator down. Roma. They could play all 5 off-site if they wanted to here, which isn't a uncommon occurrence for the kitchen site. Very commonly, the attackers, especially when you've got a lot of vertical destruction, looking towards the buck and the sledge in this way, their aim is to get control above the site, flush the players out, force the defenders away from being on site, and then you play for a retake once the plant attempt will come in from the attackers. So it's a good plan they've got where they are very happy playing off-site because of the lineup they've got on side. Now the question is, can DarkZero get that top floor control, start to open up those verticals without being shut down by SANDBOX in the first case? Of course, another alternative is, forget about the top floor, just go straight to site.
And if you are SANDBOX, of course, here, why wouldn't you play so aggressively after how well the last round went here, catching every single opportunity from DarkZero, and more importantly, winning about 90+% of the gunfights that went on the inside of that round there. So SANDBOX are certainly going to be feeling confident about their own capability to play things out. Nova, though, might not be so much anymore after being spotted out by this drone, but he does have the support coming in from Akona, and as well, the drone bleed coming in right now from SANDBOX is a massive. DarkZero have 40% of their drone count remaining, only 2 of them actually active on the board at this point. Nova's going to be spotted out once again, but that's a second drone thrown for virtually 0 additional info, except for maybe spotting the player back towards kitchen they didn't get on the first drone.
John, they're 50 seconds in and they've gone through 8 drones. They're down to 2 remaining, and I like looking at drone counts at about 60 seconds left because that's normally when you can see how much info is left for the execute. Here they're left with nothing. They do get a nade through, but they have 1 drone to their name. It's currently going through sight and will likely get shot out soon. 90 seconds in the round, they may as well have no information. It's going to be a raw push in to see what they can achieve, and it's a 4 versus 4.
Nova ready to fend off the challenge here as he shuts down Eclipse after taking a few hits himself. Shael as well as HXD picking up massive numbers themselves, and just like the last round, DarkZero, get maybe 1 exchange over the course of this brute force push. NJR is going to be left alone. Was the hero of quite a few of the rounds yesterday for DC. He's got to do it again here in a 1v4 clutch. Only found that first kill, and now no easy way to get into this kitchen window as the laser gates are going to be blocking his way. Can't afford to just eat the 40 HP that he'd lose by going into there, and of course, no frag grenades left to try and burn it out either, so has to force the issue back over towards the case, work his way in and immediately be shut down by Nova as SANDBOX quickly get themselves a second round.
That was abysmal. There's no other way of putting it. That was abysmal from DarkZero. All drones being committed in towards service side, one after the other, like lambs to the slaughter, jumping in and just losing them for seemingly no reason. And I reasoned back to yesterday, I thought for a second, oh, okay, it's SANDBOX. I don't know why I went to it, but I was like, SANDBOX are attacking here, it's okay, they lose drones quite a lot. Because what I've seen from the NA teams in the last 12 hours, or the last 24 hours or so, despite not getting wins, is they are very, very precious about their drones. They'll get a quick peek, instantly rotate 90 degrees, and jump back to safety. They are so serious about keeping their drones alive. For DarkZero to just throw them in one after the other there, have no information, and be forced to push into bathroom and service with 0 information is a massive slip up on their side. That cannot be allowed to happen again.
We're going to see a slight change up in the operator lineup here. The Flores is going to be brought in a little bit more soft breach capability, especially from ranged as well, as Canadian will be taking up the mantle on that operator. Hopefully this is going to allow DarkZero to either clear out the site a bit more efficiently with regards to utility or force players out of position before they make that aggressive push. If this is going to be the way forward for the rest of the half from DarkZero, which honestly might not be the case anymore because the first 2 rounds went so poorly, I could see them shifting back into a more traditional state where they're going to focus heavily on droning for the first 2 minutes, like pretty much every other team does, and then work on the execute in that final minute, 30 seconds, or whatever it happens to be remaining for them at that point. Let's see what exactly that will be, though, as SANDBOX is busy setting up their own default here in the double fire.
Yeah, generally you get a round broken down into 3 phases, right? Each taking approximately a minute, maybe a little bit more towards the second. You kind of have the get to the building, get everyone safe on the roof, or at least close to the building so you're safe and not going to get yourself spawn peaked. About that 2-minute mark, everyone tends to get back on drones, or at least 3 players will, whilst 1 or 2 entry their way in, or will join on that drone game to find out what the next play is. Then you enter that kind of execution setup phase, and of course the execute then follows not too long after. That is...
That's so unlucky for sure.
Yes. Very, very unlucky for NJR, though. It goes to show, you know, sometimes just running in a building and spraying a couple of windows, you never know what you're going to find on the other side. A good entry, it gives DZ a starting an advantage. I imagine now you'll see them, you know, not get excited off that and try and go charging in. There will be that 1 minute or so of let's drone things out, let's get ourselves ready, and then start working our way forwards.
Shael, unfortunately, yeeting himself into the spray pattern of NJR is going to lead to an early disadvantage for SANDBOX here. Not a detrimental one so much at this point, though. Once again, remember, he was off-site presence and was mainly on the role of roaming anyway. So while, again, it's going to give DarkZero an extra amount of time to play around with the map control that they've now gained for themselves, as well as the fact that they'll have the 5v4 advantage, the site setup is still very well and secured. We'll have to see, though, what else SANDBOX can work towards, as they're now going to be restricted primarily, as far as I can see from our silhouettes, to the first floor hold here, which means DarkZero will have all the time in the world for NJR to open up these top-down angles with the sledge, as well as for the team to prime for their eventual execute.
It's really interesting because sometimes you see teams, or most of the time, hold very close to the pool entrance wall where you'd stick, say, a shield behind it, you get a jammer there, you get ADSs stacked in. What SANDBOX have done is actually opt not to play on the site all that aggressively. They pulled the shield back to be against the actual bar inside of Sunrise itself and are looking to play around the 90 corridor that runs outside of Kitchen. So almost saying to DarkZero, if you want to try and take control of Sunrise, please do. They're almost baiting them into it whilst making Office harder to take. They've got a shield in there. They've got a player set there like you'd normally come to expect. It is trying to encourage them up towards this north side, and I think with the sledge now doing work, dare I say DarkZero are kind of taking the bait and doing what SANDBOX want them to do.
Nova continuing to hold, waiting for an opportunity to catch NJR, another member of DarkZero that will try to peek through these top-down angles. That opportunity is going to be possibly coming up in a second, but NV Taylor gets the first strike back as he's able to take down Hyper here as we go under 1 minute for DarkZero to get themselves onto this site. They have indeed shifted back to a more traditional playstyle here, but time is going to begin to work against them. Good drone insertion has given them intel onto the position of NV Taylor, and he doesn't seem to have an easy way out of this spot either. Forced into a corner, but NJR is not ready for the movement. NV dashes over towards the kitchen, where he'll find relative safety, but an aid bounce could still lead to his death. It's going to fall a little short, however, as NJR also takes a few hits to the floor, but here comes the rest of the squad, working their way in, already having the window access, and now pushing in through pool door. Static has fended off the first player, but Canadian and NJR fend off the next two. It's left just HXD and Static to bring it back under their control. Case was down temporarily for DZ, but they've already retrieved it, and in a second here, should be able to get an uninterrupted plan off as Pan, but we'll commit to it.
Absolutely will. Two of them coming back in from the hallway, stepping back in. They've got the red pings coming through. Know that one's on the above, and one cannot get off sight. Tucked in. Pamba finds the one that he needs. All they've got to try and take here is a couple of easy fights. One, can they find the second? No, they can't. Harper has got it all to try and do. Smokes his way out here, which may deter NJR or Canadian from jumping in. But they've got to make the move. In through Smokey goes. It's an easy pre-fire for Canadian. DarkZero find the round after a flurry of kills in the mid-round. Give them the map control they need.
Losing the Oryx right at the beginning of the round. A huge detrimental loss to the members of SANDBOX Gaming. Actually bigger than I initially realized. Also, used to seeing a lot more presence up on the second floor from teams on the defense there. Thought we would actually have some more, especially reinforcements and whatnot, supporting a position over by Hookah. Yeah, here it is again. But unfortunately, that was not the case. So losing the Oryx pretty much gave DarkZero a free pass to have that first 2 minutes to set up whatever the heck they wanted. And for SANDBOX, had far too little presence on the actual site to fend off that execute when it boiled in.
I like the idea that was coming out from Nova as well, right? Playing on the Ella, sat around the pink sofa, was just waiting for NJR to peek the wrong angle, to blast him away with the Ella Titan Killer, as the shotgun was so well coined by Demo over in the UK. It's just one of those that I look at and think, okay, if you've been a bit more aggressive or pushed for an angle a little bit differently, he shuts down NJR, he stops the mid-round kill coming through. He turns that post plant into a 1 versus 1 instead of a 1 versus 2. Lots of little things that could have been amended ever so slightly, but also nervous about the fact those verticals existed and they weren't 100% sure of where the pressure was coming in. Now we get Hookah and Billiards, and rather than playing on site this time, we've got a mirror going in around bars. So I'm glad to see that mirror being brought along. And for DarkZero, it's going to be the question of where the attack comes from. Do we see them go towards Hookah again? Do they start off towards Aqua? Do they mix things up and keep SANDBOX asking questions?
Let's find out here over the next few moments, as once again SANDBOX is going to be looking to take control for themselves. Had no problem on the first 2 rounds with that aggressive style being brought from DarkZero. Now they've honed it in, taking things back to a more standard style of play. DarkZero takes immediate control of the first round there. Boosted, of course, by an initial early kill, which is kind of gifted to them, but even away from that, very solid play built up by DZ throughout the rest of that round also. We're going to see NJR try to take some early control over here towards Sunrise. They do have the drone up on top of the bar to make sure there's no one hard holding the safe position behind it either. But there's also other concerns, as we can see Nova getting spotted out in the corner and nearly losing his life in the opening seconds of the round yet again.
Back to the mirror window. I was going to say, it's almost interesting how seeing seeing is happening all over again. The deja vu, NJR pushing into Sunrise. Last time he was left in a 1 versus 4 after the rest of his team had been picked off. This time round on DarkZero, no one being taken out too early on. Looking much better, getting the information game on the go as we spoke about earlier on, and looking for the next move. Canadian and Eclipse both sat on drones here to collect the information they need, and thankfully, we do have a fair few more drones left alive as well.
So seeing here, Shael continuing to maintain his position. He's going to notice the frag grenade working his way in. It's a very good thing that he'll end up moving, as he would have been a dead player for sure from that position if he tried to maintain it. DZ, however, is going to use this pressure to start working their way in. The X-Cairo is going on it, but it's going to be stopped. Beautiful fend off there from the SANDBOX members to keep that power position alive as the utility gets drained from DZ, as will the health with Envy Taylor nearly ripping off the head of NJR. Just misses it as he goes down to still very low HP at about 20 or less.
That Finker juice might have just saved his life. I'm not sure if that was like 21, 22 HP, but it definitely looks towards that 20 side of things. Good cover coming in so far from SANDBOX to make sure that Mira lived for a good amount of time, and a lot of the utility consumed by DarkZero. They've still got 2-3 more nades to play through, as well as the 4 flashbangs. They're getting this wall opened up, so Vaz is no longer safe to play behind. That's when you should see action start to come in. But SANDBOX are playing this so patiently. DarkZero slowly whittling away at the defense, mind you, could make this a very explosive ending.
DarkZero still has to hold off through the toxic bays, but the good news is there's only one remaining after this, and we still have plenty of time left on the clock. It's one of the benefits of the way that DarkZero is currently playing things. It's a high-pressure environment where they're oftentimes left with a good amount of excess time. Usually, however, not really excess drones, as just pointed out to me here. Things have brought down to a very low point yet again. Only 2 active drones and 1 in the pocket of the members of DZ, so they'll be very, very limited on intel here for this remaining 45 seconds.
I can't stress how well SANDBOX have played this defense so far as well. Again, not taking any crazy engagements, not being caught out. The challenge onto NGR, reminding him that he's never quite safe or comfortable down there, but not yet losing a member. Hyper striking first. It's static to fall down. The 5 versus 4 should now be that point of inflection for DarkZero to say, okay, that's the opening kill, let's make a move. Envy rotating up, finds 1, finds 2, pushing his way up through luggage. They had no idea he was there. Again, the drone's low. They don't have this information on the flanks, and it's coming back to bite them. 10 seconds set in, 4 versus 3.
Hyper focus on the push here for the members of DZ has left the roam game completely undealt with here, meaning SANDBOX has complete freedom to play their own game. Hyper's alone. That doesn't mean he's out of the round, though, forcing the issue. The Gun 6 things off as he tries every move he can to get those kills, but it's just not enough. SANDBOX closes out the round on the timer, and even they're laughing a little bit about that situation there as we get a bit of a loopy end of the round.
We've seen this in the EU. For those who don't watch, we had a hilarious play back when Uno was still on G2, where he was defusing and Corey had no ammo left. He gets out his Gun 6 and shoots. Uno panics and comes off the disable, even though there was no way Corey could kill him. It was hilarious. That one there's a little bit different. That, I think, is him just expecting that he has got a pistol in the back pocket. Didn't want to reload, of course. Was kind of stuck with, well, what can I pull out here? A Gun 6, as we know, not really lethal. Not going to do the work for you. But another round, again, I'll really commend SANDBOX for their time wasting, their drone killing, their defensive maneuvering there. Always kind of poking at the sides and reminding DarkZero, hey, we are here, we will happily challenge you, but not doing enough to get themselves taken down too early in the round to see things fall by the wayside. Very good from them. DarkZero are the ones who need to do a bit of work here, because this attacking half, as we all know, a map that is very, very, attacker leaning, is slowly starting to step away from them.
Right, so for SANDBOX, a 3-1 lead after that little bit of a bump in the road on the previous round, 2 back. Things are once again back under their control. DarkZero as well continuing to evolve their own operator lineup as they try to find a winning formula. Second player is now taken on Finka, where Canadian was rocking with it before. The Canadian himself has moved over here towards the Ying, as we're going to see the Candelas come in to possibly increase the execute potential for DZ here. They've been focusing a lot on that, which I agree with to a certain extent, because that's been the brightest part of their attacking side so far. But again, still need to gather control on the extended game and other aspects of SANDBOX's game style that unfortunately is coming back to bite DZ inside of those executes.
I don't know if you remember more, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. Do you remember any more grenade kills than the one that Eclipse got from service entrance in towards site when they were on kitchen? Can you think of any more?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Because we haven't seen Jaeger being brought along by SANDBOX. In fact, we've seen him a couple of rounds, sorry. In this round, we're not going to see it. But what we've seen is DarkZero consistently bring at least 4 frags. More often than not, it's been 6. They banned away the Wamai for this style of play, yet to only find 1 frag grenade across 4 rounds so far, 1 nade kill. is abysmal. Like, that's your game plan. You're playing behind the frags and not getting kills from them. There's questions to start asking. This is why I think they've now defaulted to saying, right, we need a bunker bus. We need a big execute. We need the Ying on side. And already, as John's just pointed out to me, they've lost 4 drones inside the first 60 seconds. It's not as bad as it was previously, but they need to keep these alive. They're down to 5, John. It just keeps on bleeding away from them.
Just constantly throwing.
Watch this one die as well now. Ready?
Yeah,
Ready?
It's
gone. What is that? Why?
I was going to say Nova or someone else should still be holding the barrels position as they were in the previous rounds, so that is once again just going to be one thrown in there. I can somewhat understand why they're willing to constantly throw it in, because that is an evolving defense that at SANDBOX have positioned back there. Here comes the execute though as the Candelas are getting ready to throw it in. Envy Taylor is going to have one thrown right into his face. He has to fall back into the depths of the bathroom and hope he can remain safe, but it's not going to be the case. HXD, he's ready to move out, but no, Panba has the position behind the Lambo, and he takes out HXD instead. DarkZero are maintaining, and now they're bringing out the smokes and the rest of these Candelas to push onto the site. Nova as well can't maintain as he overpeaks the window, and NJR takes him out from there as well. This is a beautiful execute from DZ, in fact a flawless one, as they take a second round.
Finally, we see it come together. And I was going to say before it all kicked off, this round, I don't actually hate them losing drones as much as the prior, because their win condition was the Ying. Those Candelas, those smokes to get a plant down, that was the go-to game plan. So if you need all that extra information that you don't mind losing drones for through service, okay, you'll take it. You'd still rather have those drones alive, but if your single point of push is service entrance, that's not a problem. But I like how the Candelas forced these members of SANDBOX to kind of panic and move a little bit. The lobby player was sort of skittish and had to get moving. The kitchen player ran straight into the line of sight from the kitchen window out of panic of being Candela'd. It was very, very smart, and I thought it was a really good shout coming out from DarkZero to bring that. The problem is it doesn't normally work more than once. Teams start to figure it out, and it feels here with the changeover to Blue Bar and Sunrise, that's exactly what SANDBOX are anticipating. The Pulse being brought along as a 6th pick could be explosive.
The good news is DZ's not going to become over-reliant on this Ying execute. It's already been swapped back out as Canadian's gone to another new operator here. I think he's been...
I mean, what could... if 4 nades won't do it, you bring 6. If 6 won't do it, you bring 8.
So he's going to jump onto the Yana now and see if he can make the difference from there. I think for him, that's like the 4th up, if not 5th, that he's tried to play for himself this half here. I've been keeping the closest track on it, but he's definitely been moving around the rotation on that. As there's been quite a bit of flex being played out by him so far inside of this half as DZ continue to look for opportunities to take the lead away. They just may do it as well. They can pull off his one final attack here in the double bars. They'll tie us up at 3-3 at halftime.
Again, those 8 nades, they need to get kills with them. You cannot keep on bringing along this many explosives and not finding kills. There are 3 ADSs on side. There are 3 flashbangs. It's almost like they've done the math and calculated, hey, we can burn through these, and then you've got to worry about the Gon 6s coming in too. Like, there is no excuse to not be finding kills with these nade kills. I'm aware that at the minute, trying to nade people through the floor puts them down to a... Oh! Are you kidding me? Welcome to APAC, friends.
I knew he had the shotgun for a reason, and I was like, what's this going to lead to? Well, we got our answer very quickly as he's able to hold a tight angle on the corner right next to the window, obviously spots the immobile NJR and makes a quick assumption. He's probably on cams. He's right, leaps out, 2 pumps from the shotty, and he's got him down. 1 more pump to get him back in the building, and he's safe as well. So that's actually a really smart move coming out there from Static to make that opening kill happen.
I can't remember if it was SANDBOX, obviously formerly known as Cloud9, or if it was a different APAC team. I want to say it was Fav, who brought along 3 shotguns on this map to do stuff just like that. That window's been jumped out on so much in APAC North, and I'm amazed they've tried to pull it out at a major, and it's actually worked. I mean, admittedly, when is an NA team ever going to expect someone to come flying out of that window? They're only C4 on Static, connects onto the right man, brings down Hyper. They are matched on frag grenade or explosive kills so far in terms of what the frag grenades have done versus what C4s have done. That's crazy. Shild, surely dead to rights. How does he get out with 2 grenades dancing around him and a man on the window? I will never know.
The cross is just not there at the moment for DZ, unfortunately. He's Canadian, the only one putting pressure on this spot and still focused on throwing out that second nade when the cross is made, so not able to finish off Shael when he goes for that dash as he made a massive gamble and assuming there wouldn't be a second player with Overwatch. And thankfully for him, he was correct. SANDBOX continue to maintain a very strong advantage in this round with over a minute remaining for DarkZero to play, and that's really the only benefit DZ has to play at this point, is away from that, they are locked into a 2v5 with just Canadian and Eclipse left in the fight. Eclipse starts us off well, though, from this 2v5 by finding the clean kill against Nova. Barely any damage being reciprocated onto him, and as well, still quite a few drones to be thrown out here for the two remaining players to get intel onto what the site setup looks like, such as that bar player being spotted out right there. Canadian as well, with a slight top-down angle. You're going to see a yellow ping going on towards the bar player. Just can't necessarily find it, and in fact, he nearly gets some pellets shot back at him, so has to back away and reset things once again.
Static can see everything. He can pull out that cardiac sensor, he can tell them exactly where these players are pushing from, and all they need to know is when he makes the call, you go for the swing. You can see how passive they're being right now. He's expecting one to come in. Eclipse taking a pump full to the face, but not yet going down. About 20 HP to his name. One more blast will be all it takes for this man to be taken out. Shyle trying to contest his way up. Cool vibes. They've got the right idea. Eclipse goes down to the pump. It's a 2-pump coming in for the Pulse, and Envy to close things out. It's another victorious round coming in for SANDBOX. 4-2 at the half, and DarkZero, they've got some work to do, John.
Also some great adjustment there coming in from SANDBOX, previously adjusting from the hold they did back on their first defense over at the double bar, where they tried to do it somewhat more horizontally, had the Oryx upstairs that was picked initially, and then from that point forward, there was way too little. Yeah, great play once again. Look how smoothly it's done as well. No problems hopping back in. Even as a player inside of the pool door, watching in case there was another one up by hookah stairs that tried to take him out on the rotate in through the window. So pretty much every facet of that aggressive play was covered by SANDBOX. Really great stuff for them.
It's a small thing where if you know a player is sat there as well, like stick someone on the hookah door and it's still closed up, get them on the right side and just have them open it out as the player goes to run. He either dies to nades or he dies to you holding the angle. Like SANDBOX yesterday, Team 1 proved that they can be punished on this map. When they go for these rotates back to site, when they're forced to run out of positions, they had some beautiful crossfires. I explained to you the one when Shyle was sat against the single reinforced wall in kitchen. They had one on service entrance door, one on the kitchen window, and as soon as he was forced to move by a buck from above, he ran into 2 crossfires and died immediately. I'm just not seeing DarkZero pull out that same style of play where the teamship is there. It's almost like the right ideas exist, but the execution is just not followed by DarkZero. And this is the kind of things that you guys have seen in NAL over the last few weeks, is good ideas, just needs a lot of refinement and time to really get them right and capture the little nitty-gritty details.
As we saw with those more aggressive executes where they're willing to kind of throw drones away, and to explain a reason why DarkZero was perfectly comfortable doing that, it's because a lot of those attacks they would lead into when they were being so haphazard with their drones, these were like all-in pushes where if something went wrong, it would have led to the loss of the round, so it wasn't a big deal for them to potentially waste out the drones there because they weren't going to find much use out of them should the push fail anyway. Great positioning from Shyle here. Gets the door open, knew there was going to be a player behind the bar. You could see the preset drone here to get that intel and immediately shuts him down on the peak. Canadian wants revenge, but will he be able to get it as Static is coming in for a fight?
Static taking a bit of damage, but look how aggressive he's going here as well. Gets the down onto Canadian. Drones are blinking red everywhere as information is shared for both teams here. One down on either side. It's basically a 4 versus 2. Nova being brought back to his feet. Canadian might not have much the same joy. NJR from above, able to provide a little bit of cover. Has got smoke canisters on side also to cover himself if so required. One on the downstairs, one pushing the way up onto the hookah balcony. As it stands, this feels like another SANDBOX round.
See Shyle keeping close eyes on Canadian to make sure no one was able to sneak up and revive him. Certainly not going to be the case, especially with Static being as close as he was. Static, feeling this situation's a little bit too hot, is going to back outside just to be safe, and a safe move indeed that will be, as only NJR and Hyper will be left alive, and it's really only going to be NJR positioned on the site itself. Hyper still needing to rotate back over as he's trying to cover off a potential Aqua push, should we see the members of SANDBOX try to overcomplicate this play and work themselves over towards that. They're actually probably going to do that as well. That shouldn't be the immediate loss for them, however, as once again, they've been very good at watching their side flanks, so they just have to try and catch Hyper in the process.
That's it. I mean, they've got a minute and a half to play with. You've got so many drones out in the field, 6 feet precise, 2 still in back pocket. Use this time to collect the information that you need, and they were just ready. Again, APAC know this play style. It is all they've known for the last 2 or 3 years. You are not going to surprise them. Pop a pump out the ready, finds MB Taylor. It's at least one coming back in, but NGR has been in a 1vx a few too many times this game. He hasn't won one yet, and I don't see this being the one that starts it out. Finds himself with his second smoke canister coming out, connecting onto a wall, challenging from big window, and the members of SANDBOX are scattered to the high winds. They want nothing to do with this. They're happy to let him run around and try and pull this round back, but it's going to be 5-2 to the APAC team.
The air jab just reconfirms that he's still on the inside of Hookah and hasn't tried the transition yet, so still keeping good pacing on it here for SANDBOX. You can see SANDBOX not worried about this position at all, as they've got the cutoff. Static moving from the rappel over towards the ruins to make sure things wouldn't go awry if he was able to sneak forward and take out the players on site. It's a swift shutdown from SANDBOX as they push ever further towards victory here, just a few rounds away from getting it done now.
They are very, very close at this point, and you don't really see the momentum working anywhere in DarkZero's favor. Look at the difference that you saw in that round compared to some of DarkZero's attacks, where we were constantly stressing about the droning issues they had. The SANDBOX pausing, staying on drones, having 8 of them still alive later in the round is just again to show that they are being a lot more careful with how they're approaching this, a lot more steady. And I think I touched on this yesterday for Dan Wonkier in their game against Fury as the last one that ended the day. I said the thing that makes these APAC teams so hard to deal with is they can go from a crawl to a sprint at the click of a finger. It's unbelievable how fast they can change their pace, whereas other teams are then still stuck in first gear and trying to get started, and the round is basically then done. They can just deal and adapt so well because of the craziness they've gotten used to, and although it hasn't yet resulted in a big top 4 finish at a major, for example, you just know it's slowly starting to bubble underneath the surface.
Absolutely the case here as APAC continues to get further and further, or closer and closer, I should say, towards that international title that they've looked for so long. And I'll be honest, this may be the event where we finally get it or get very close to it at a minimum. But there's another region as well that's been competing quite closely with them and already excelling so far this year, and that's LATAM. It's probably going to be the biggest challenge for them as we start to see some of these APAC teams qualify out from the group stage. For NA, however, we're just looking for one team to make it through at this point. It's not looking like it's going to be DZ with the way that the play has gone from the first day and this first match. This is the better side expectedly for DZ as well here on the defense. So we would hope for them to be able to rebound with such a closer scoreline at 5-2. It's certainly palatable, but that first round does not give me the best confidence about what we're going to see. However, now they'll go back to Hookah Billiards, try things again by switching out over towards Elysian to see if the trap operator will potentially boost the proficiency here for DZ.
Absolutely, there is... I mean, the thing is, the issue in that last round wasn't like slowing SANDBOX down, it was just not taking aggressive challenges onto them early in the round. Again, you're against a region or a team from the region that knows how to deal with this style of play. You are not going to be able to surprise them with this level of aggression. It might work once or twice, it's definitely not going to stick. So I'd like to see DarkZero kind of go back to what makes them stronger, what makes, you know, almost NA as a style as a region of being quite calculated in their play, very strategic, set up your crossfires, dig in deep, really make SANDBOX sweat to get control in the same way SANDBOX did in the earlier round. Think back to the one where it took DarkZero 2 minutes to get any control of Vars or inside of Hookah, for example. That's the sort of stuff I'd really like to see DZ do, because where some APAC teams do fall down is when it comes to the more coordinated, structured play, finishing a checklist, for example, they can get tripped up, and that's where I think DarkZero will find success.
So DarkZero starting to get pushed towards the end of this match here now. SANDBOX get one more round. They'll be on the brink of match point to try and shut things down for themselves here and secure another 3-point boost for themselves in the overall group rankings. SANDBOX will be once again sitting in a very comfortable position, already in second at this point, looking to move themselves up from there if they get the additional points from this match. HXD, though, going to be moving in with a few of these teammates. We did see the wall left soft in VIP, so it'll be very easy for them to move in and take that control initially, supported, of course, by teammates such as the Lion, being played by Shael. We'll hop in here once again. Focus on the drone work for these first few moments. They don't know exactly what DarkZero has to work with, but they're going to spot at least one of them, the Legion, roaming around downstairs towards security. So someone from SANDBOX more than likely will put Overwatch on the main stairs to make sure that doesn't become a problem for them.
Absolutely, starting the way up nice and slow here. I spoke about that adaptation in pace they're very happy to employ, and Eclipse for the second round as well, both defensives, is bringing along the Warden. I think out of fear of smoke-based play, maybe some flashes coming flying in, we have yet to, of course, see the Ying coming out of SANDBOX, so I can't imagine it's anticipation of that being a thing. It's more just not wanting to get yourself spammed out by flashes, given there are so many on the side of SANDBOX. I believe 9 is what they brought along here, so lots to worry about a potential flash spam coming through, I understand it, and hopefully it works out.
Alright, so SANDBOX again with that initial control to work off of here, still trying to move it forward, and the next thing they'll be taking control of is going to be Aqua. So trying to be cautious, of course, of any aggressive swings that we could get from the DZ side of things as they work their way in here. A Nitro is deployed, I think, just under the Lion at this point, played by Shael, so it's going to be dangerous for him, but he's not trying to move away from this at some point soon. Eclipse does take some heat towards the site, however, as SANDBOX is already in position to execute towards as that Nitro is going to go off, it looks like, but way too far away, and we're focused on the site execute anyway, as these members of SANDBOX are now, for the time being, worried about trying to bleed out the extra time remaining on the Toxic Bait. They actually find a spot where Nova can sneak through and not be affected by it. Beautiful work from him, but no! We are going to see a headshot snuck in, less than a second remaining on that plant timer as well. That's a huge loss for SANDBOX, and someone needs to move in quickly to try and make up for it.
They've got time. There's 45 seconds to play with here. It was a very early plant in a slightly alternative spot as well that almost worked out wonderfully for them. Hyper holding the tight angle here, daring the man to come pushing in. I hope to God they know he's here. They should know about this. And Static finds another. One comes through and he swings it. How on earth has he got away with that? Pamba in a 1 versus 3, but they've got more than enough time to play with here. No C4 on side, no denial coming in onto the default plant spot. Flashed out, trapped inside VIP. SANDBOX are looking set for match point. What a round from SANDBOX.
Great stuff, taking that immediate control over towards the VIP area and extending that once again towards Theater as well, immediately fending off any of the aggressive rotates we could have gotten from DZ, forcing them into just a standard hold against an Aqua execute as SANDBOX would transition their control over to that part of the map as well. This is done so early that, as we mentioned, despite the initial attempt to plant failing, they have no problem whatsoever sending a second player in there to reattempt it and to clean up the rest of the resistance that was present for DZ. SANDBOX are in full control of this matchup right now, and it's going to take a heroic effort out of all of DZ to try and bring this back with 4 rounds in a row needed just to trigger OT and guarantee at least 1 point for DZ out of this match.
That's the 1 round. They take away the Warden. In comes the Ying. This is what they were fearful of very clearly. And it's the same site in which DarkZero employed it on in their attacks. So maybe you're going to see the same sort of thing from SANDBOX. They'll commit quite heavily towards the service side of things. Again, a small thing I really want to highlight and keep a close eye on is the drone count as this progresses. DarkZero on both of their attacks inside 60 seconds have been down to 2 or 3 drones remaining. Now, SANDBOX have already lost 1. I'm keeping a very close eye on it, and I mean it when I say that. I'm just keen to see how big their information game sits when they come round to executing with that Ying, because that could be the big difference maker that really shows you the stark contrast right now between the form of these 2 teams.
It's going to be one of the more wild sites when it comes to how DZ will more than likely spread their players out across the map, so a lot of things for SANDBOX to try and control over before they can feel confident enough to sneak into the site. This will be a nice preset drone, though, if it's not noticed. And I'm going to be honest, I doubt that'll get noticed by DZ hiding up inside of the bar there, so should get a great amount of intel about the aggression that could be swung out from the hookah side if that is going to be in the control play here for SANDBOX.
So you're starting off on this east side here again. Early peaks always being shown out here by the side of DarkZero. They are very keen to match the aggression, and I will commend them for that as well, to be fair. Yesterday we criticised a few teams who were very scared of getting out in the map and looking to meet the attackers. They'd sit back on site and go, okay, we poke a little bit of drones coming towards us, but we don't go much further than that. At least here DarkZero are willing to commit and get out and stay confident. We said the same thing about Down 1 Kia yesterday. Even though they lost a few rounds, they were being very confident, and at least that is still kind of there for DarkZero. Again, it's just the actual execution doesn't go the way they need.
So slow start here for SANDBOX as they're taking their time to build up intel. NV Taylor as well as Nova committed onto drones right now to try to drip feed that intel over. While once again, they take full theater control for themselves. Shael being the leading player, leading that charge forward and transitioning it towards 90 as well. Quick work on the default cam that he shoots out there. As well, we'll have no problem following this through. This drone actually not going to be able to spot out Hyper, but keep in mind, I believe they still have that preset sitting up in the bar, which is not active at that point, but they'll still be aware of the presence from Cool Vibes rotating back down, meaning they've got less to deal with as they transition over towards that area if they're going to try to push into it.
Absolutely. Slow and steady wins the race, it feels like, for SANDBOX in some cases. We're down to that 90-second mark in the round, and to be fair, they have chewed through pretty much all their drones here. Only 4 remaining, which makes me feel nervous for them. Now down to 3. So DarkZero doing a great job in holding this kind of line that you can see working diagonally left up the map, where Hyper's inside a kitchen, Eclipse in the hallway, 1 inside of lobby. They're just setting up a defensive line here to keep them at bay constantly, and it's given SANDBOX no ability to control any part of the map. Really good by DarkZero so far with Canadian starting with an opening kill outside in towards the Ferrari area. Great first starting point, and in comes SANDBOX. This could go horribly wrong.
Nova's going to be leading it as well here, trying to force the issue on the planet. It just does not work out in any aspect. Canadian still has the cutoff. Panda as well, starting to punish these players as they begin to move in as HXD falls next. Envy was ready to make a push from the window, but is no longer going to be the case. He needs to support the main play now, as Shael has successfully snuck in through the service door, but has pretty much no real estate to actually play with at this point, which is why he needs the support from NV Taylor, who's going to move in, assist with this play here. Shael will focus on watching the flank that could come in from the service door as well. We're going to see an many 1DUs to get these players out of here and allow them to rotate over towards the front door. Well, they'll try to make a reinsertion, but again, DarkZero has this covered. At least 2 players in the neighborhood. Panda being one of them, and oh no!
Oh,
Shael accidentally knocking out Envy while he had an angle onto Eclipse, leaving just him in this fight now. Sub 15 seconds as well, so DarkZero really in full control and looking safe to pick up a 3rd round.
Yes, much better round out of DarkZero. Great defense coming in and remaining stalwart. The confidence is there. Canadian doing the work. And for the first time, I feel it's fair to say against SANDBOX, that wasn't a great round. To attack into service and entrance these days, you really need to make sure you have control of lobby. Throughout EUL, the one thing I've really celebrated is with the changes to that site, where you can't plant just inside the doorway, you actually have to move into service to get the plant off. You can hold these long angles from towards security or lobby and just shoot through the triple wall that's reinforced on the south side of service. That's what Canadian was playing, that's what Eclipse was playing, and there was one attempt from SANDBOX to clear that area out, and as soon as Canadian got the kill outside the front door, it was like, we don't need it. And it's like, no, you do need it. You can't just Hail Mary this and hope for the best unless your smokes are perfectly placed. But that was just kind of a panic round for me for SANDBOX. A good round by DarkZero, held their ground, took the gunfights, and have finally got themselves on the board, at least in this half.
SANDBOX not paying nearly enough respect to those off-site presence players such as Canadian hiding out back and towards the lobby, and a few others that were supporting him as well. So SANDBOX, I do appreciate, though, the immediate tactical pause. It's more likely the coach notices that lack of respect, is coming in here to chime in with his thoughts to try and quickly correct that. Because other than that round, like you said, things have been looking pretty flawless for SANDBOX throughout the course of this game here. We've been playing it out very, very well, and the rounds that have been lost have mainly been due to the successes of DarkZero.
It's just like one round, right? And I think in their mind, again, the coach, like you say, is probably stepping in and going, right, boys, look, we've got 3 rounds to get this right. We know that means 3 potential site rotations. We know we can make one work. Remember the fundamentals, the things that got us to where we are. Let's get this next one right. Let's not drag this out and start letting nerves creep up on us, because for them, this would be an incredible win if they can get this out over DarkZero and, again, further elevate themselves up through this group and start pushing for that 1st and 2nd position.
Pretty much going to be able to attain at least the 2nd position. As you can see from our live ranking there at the top right, things will be looking good for them if they end up coming out on top. And keep in mind, teams want to try and close these maps out inside of regulation, because they'll get an additional point by doing so. If they allow their opponents to chase the scoreline up into OT, they'll lose that extra point and only be able to gain 2 from the win, and their opponents will get 1. That's kind of a commiseration prize for at least making it to OT.
I was looking down the group standings just now, actually, and also on the other stream. I know you're not a fan of spoilers, but I'm going to say it. So you've got 3 seconds to mute the stream if you don't want to hear the scores of the other game. At the minute, it's currently sat at 5-3, I believe it is, or maybe 5-4. I think it's 5-3 to Team Vitality. They are starting to fight their way back in after being down 5-1 to Team 1 on Chalet. So there's a little bit of a scrap going on there. For SANDBOX in this game, if they win this one and Vitality go on to win theirs in regulation, both of them would be on 6 points. Team 1 potentially then pulled into a scrap where you've got 3 teams on 6 points. DarkZero naturally still stay at the bottom on 0, and it becomes a 3-horse race to who gets those top 2 spots. And it will come down to the next 3 games in this group that will take place, of course, over the next couple of days.
So for DarkZero here, it's do or die time as they look to try and maintain their presence once again against SANDBOX here. SANDBOX taking a very slow start to this round, as well as you would generally expect, given the way that that last round broke down here. A much different site being played this time by DarkZero as well, as they're going to be up inside of Theater, more than likely with that extended hold going out into the hallway that has become the mainstay for most North American teams and quite a few teams globally as well. SANDBOX realize this, and are going to try to put the early pressure onto Hookah Billiards and work their way down that hallway to possibly directly pressure it. That could extend also into VIP, but for the time being, the wall is safe and secure, meaning that DarkZero are going to be able to continue using that spot.
I do love this hold. The one thing I'm slightly nervous of is that that single wall going into VIP hasn't been reinforced off, because when you lose control of this room, they can just start pacing down kind of past the shield, and the shield that's on 90 isn't as effective. So the wall currently between NGR and Pamba is the one that I'm thinking should really look to be reinforced off. Great shot by Canadian on the Echo as well. Not normally the operator you look at taking entry fights, but in this case, getting a crucial kill. And what a game for Canadian, by the way. 7 kills, the highest on the team. I can't think of a time I've said that before.
Overall, this has been a massive overall contribution from Canadian since he joined up through DZ. There's been quite a few games, actually, where he's been kind of the shining star in the individual stats department, and the rest of the team has fallen a little bit short. It's kind of a weird thing we've seen happening from time to time. I do want to call NJR as well, as he's been having a very consistent performance throughout this tournament. And while, again, DarkZero has struggled quite a bit, when clutches happen, it's almost always been NJR here that's brought it to the table. As once again, he's continuing to form his own legacy. Started things out last year, and Now looking to continue building that once again as he's joined up with DZ. You can see Static in the meanwhile here, continuing to look for a path to get himself up to the second floor, begin putting pressure on the other side. His opponents know he's here though, and Static doesn't seem to be ready for the challenge as Eclipse just walks right out and takes the duel. Gets a bit too greedy though, as HXD will be able to refrag him, taking Eclipse out of this picture, but still an advantage for DarkZero as things go down to a 4v3.
There's no way that Harper or Static there expected him to come pushing, but it's good that Harper was nearby to go for the fight back. Hyper finding yet another, and Shyle has got some work to do along with Harper. They know that one's inside VIP. Nova not able to find his man, sees the head and finds him first. A 2 versus 3, sees the third, but can't quite find Bambazoo, who tucks in tight. Now wants to try and run this clock down. Shyle, what a shot to come into a 2K. It's a 2 versus 2. Hyper and Nadian, all that keeps DarkZero in this game as another EE1D rings out. Great side angle being held by Canadian, and now it's a 1 versus 2 for Shyle. Should be able to get the closeout. Nadian with a massive 3K. Keeps DarkZero alive. 2 more rounds, boys.
One at a halftime sight, I swear, it gives people a huge buff here as Canadian is able to work it beautifully inside of Echo. Once again, shutting down this situation first with that aggressive kill over towards the big window repel, and those final 2 at the end to seal the deal as well. Great cutoff established by him. Great round played out once more by DZ, and they are holding on here. They've made themselves to the halfway point. To pick up 2 more rounds here to try and trigger OT. They'll at minimum guarantee the 1 point from this match, 2 of course, if they can outright get the victory with those 2 additional rounds that'll be needed. For SANDBOX, things are starting to slip away, but they as well only lost half the round. There's still these 2 additional opportunities to shut things down. And in addition to that, we've started to unlock the sites they've already won for themselves as they can now go back to hookah and billiards. Things are going to get a bit more dangerous for DZ as a result of that.
Yeah, this is that full rotation being finished now, essentially, right? They've gone through 2 rounds, which DarkZero have come out on top. And this is what the coach would have said. Look, they've got to play through 3 sites here. They've got to do a full rotation if they can take us through to OT. We've only got to get 1 right. And the last round was much closer than the prior one. This is where you feel if there is going to be a win for SANDBOX that gets them over the finish line and ends this game, it's going to be this site. Eclipse back on the Warden as per that 1 round that he didn't bring. It was when we saw the Ying come out. And clearly DarkZero a little bit nervous that SANDBOX might just go for a Hail Mary, bring the Ying and go for a full-on execute. So I like that patience and kind of control is being shown by the side of DZ, not being too aggressive in their picks. Hopefully this works out well for them, and I'm confident with how this site has played out previously, they could do pretty well here.
So let's see if indeed that will be the case for our SANDBOX roster as they try to breach through the DarkZero setup yet again. DarkZero, though, has been finding their footing, specifically on different sites, though, such as over towards Service and inside of Theater, where we saw those last 2 rounds get picked up for themselves. SANDBOX going to put the early pressure once again just onto some of these barricades that are set up here, as they do have a couple presets to work off of themselves. I'm not sure if they're going to be actual as of yet, but it's Canadian that goes for the wild swing again at the beginning of the round towards the kitchen window, and will be caught this time by Static.
Saw him on the drone as well. That's all they need. A little bit of information goes a long way. It is invaluable. That's why I stress about drones so much. Static charging his way in, almost dying out to the hatch. I spoke about information. It almost didn't matter, but Static finding Eclipse at the bottom of Cool Vibe. So much control being lost by DarkZero here so early on. This ground floor is now clear, and SANDBOX can take all the ground they need. Grenades from below surely won't find the man above, but the shield can surely be taken away. Absolutely not. Both player and shield still intact.
The amount of pressure coming from just Static alone right now is impressive, to say the least here. The 2 kills he's picked up for himself. NV Taylor with a great cutoff by the Lambo doorway. Finishes off Panbu as well, taking him out of this fight and leaving DZ with only 2 players standing to try and clutch things out and keep their chances of picking up points from this game alive. NJR also taking lots of heat from the inside of Aqua here, as he's going down to about 1/3 of his overall health pool.
Aqua's going to be their focus. Aqua and Luggage is the play. There's 1 on the rappel. They have no idea as to what's going on. They saw the drone come up and hoped to try and go for a bait, but it simply wasn't to be the play. Let's see what we can do here then. 1 scattering out slightly more, dropping down into the courtyard. The other 1 pushing back in towards site. Hookah could be the play. That is not quite aware at this time of exactly where it's coming from. Interesting smoke on the outside to try and stop the retreat coming through. Will give away NGR's position. And this is where SANDBOX, they pull the trigger in a 4 versus 2. This could be done.
Hyper, a good first response here. He's able to take out Shael, makes the numbers a lot more palatable to play with here. Toxic Babe as well blocks off the hookah access here. That's going to bleed out more time. Not nearly enough, however, is the big problem. We still have over a minute remaining, under now, of course, and NJR only with 1 of those gas grenades remaining to block off another access point.
I'm kind of confused as to why they've got this information here. They've got a drone in the back pocket of Envy, and he's still got a drone left alive, yet he isn't on the drone. Like, your team need this information. They're not quite sure of where to push. Static finds himself another kill. There's 1 more remaining, and 40 seconds to play. NJR are. Is it time to finally clutch one of these? 1v3 sees the man at long angle, but can't quite find him. Both down to a slither of HP. Takes the angle, but no! Nova wins it out. SANDBOX hand DarkZero their third defeat and move themselves to tied first place.
And JR coming so close to that clutch. We talked about him earlier being the hero for this team, but they're just asking too much of him at this point. DarkZero drop another game. SANDBOX and APAC continue to excel here at the Rainbow Six Sweden Major as they take another victory, pushing them upwards into a guaranteed second place at a minimum for the time being here, as that will move them out of the groups if they can maintain it going towards the end, as they still have their games both tomorrow as well as today. That'll do it for us for right now. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll break this game down.
What does it take to create the future of a gaming community? Join us on this 4th episode of I Call Next as we discover how to level up gameplay and reset the expectations of an entire league. PayPal, press play.
Easy going right there. One more to go.
Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. We're here at the desk to break down that riveting match we just saw there between SANDBOX Gaming and DarkZero. NA, unfortunately, continuing to fail here at the Major as DarkZero has handed their 3rd loss. Meanwhile, APAC continuing to excel, specifically SANDBOX as well as Damwon Gaming, really kicking some butt here inside of the first day and a half that they played out.
It's crazy to say that NA has won 1 in 10 games so far. 1 in 10! That's crazy, and no one could have predicted that coming into this competition, but that's the way the stakes have fell. We'll focus, of course, on the game that we have just seen come through. It looked for a couple of rounds like DarkZero were fighting back in the second half. They got those 2 rounds rolling. It was like, okay, Canadians popping off. And then it's just the small things. For me, Intel, again, was the big thing in this game. We saw the lack of drones on attacks for DarkZero in several cases. Canadian in that final round being the opening death thanks to information. You cannot stress how important and how valuable drones are, and this game really showed that.
Also important to note here, DarkZero showing us some interesting things on their attack, almost a completely different style than what we have seen in the past. But the big question that I would ask after seeing that is this really the place you want to be testing that out at? Unfortunately, they don't really have a choice, because as I've talked about many times here on the desk and in DZ's other games, is that the attack is easily the weakest part of DZ's game right now, especially in early and mid-round aspects. They're trying to add more aggression to try and push themselves to that late-round state where they do often take control a little bit more quickly. Unfortunately, it's leading to them ignoring extended plays, as you're saying as well. The drones are being wasted far too quickly in quite a few scenarios, and it's leading to issues. I think it's very interesting. I think we're definitely going to see more out of it later on in the tournament, but again, this is not really the place you want to be trying to experiment like that.
It's incomplete.
Yeah.
I said it during the game as well, right? Right idea, you can see what they're trying to do, but it's just missing a few things, like crossfires being held. And again, you compare that to how SANDBOX faced off against Team 1 yesterday. Team 1 had them on lockdown. They were trying to get away with these cheeky, run away from where I'm trapped, I run, and I get away alive. In this game, Against Team 1, they died doing exactly that. And it was more seen from SANDBOX on their side how many kills they were capturing as DarkZero were trying to move around, that I was like, this is totally different to yesterday. And I can't stress enough again, grenades. Well, Mai was banned away by DarkZero. They wanted to play this nade-based game. One round they even brought 8 grenades. Yeah, I'm sure we only saw 1 or 2 frag grenade kills. I know definitely of 1. I don't know if there was a second. It's unbelievable that we bring in probably a total across the rounds, assume 6 per round, 36 to 40 nades, and you get 1 nade kill. That can't be allowed. That cannot be allowed when you're banning away with Mai.
Definitely not the case here. Another issue that we saw coming out from DarkZero as well, from an individual basis. Who was there to perform inside of the clutch scenarios? We saw Canadian in a couple instances.
He played very
NJR
well.
for sure. NJR, especially that final round there, we saw him stepping up. But who else besides that? Where's the performance coming in from Hyper and some of the other members that we're used to seeing step up in a big way? They're just not present right now. And I think in a moment when we get the stats up on screen, hey, thank you, production. That's perfectly timed here. We're going to see that. Even though, again, we've got Canadian as well as NJR leading. And we've got, to be fair, Hyper, Panbo, and Eclipse relatively close on stats. For me personally, I'm just not seeing the impact from those other 3 players right now.
This is it, right? A number can tell you only so much. If you go and look at a game where someone dropped 15 kills, is that 5 aces, or is it 1 or 2 kills per round scattered throughout the game, right? You don't always get the full picture, so although the kills don't look terrible there, you look across towards, say, Cost, and suddenly things don't look so rosy. On the other side, MV Taylor getting up there, but the player I really have to celebrate is Static. I said at the start of this game when the rosters came up, he's one of their entry players playing a lot of Iana, and he's struggling to make an impact. In this game, he was felt so often. 2Ks and 3Ks galore, it felt like. 12 and 6, a brilliant way to get yourself on the board.
You can even see there as well, on the entry power, on the aggressive game, it wasn't totally a terrible match for DZ as they actually matched the entry statistics on their top player. Both Static and Canadian having a 3-2 record there. So DZ has the game understood here on the attacking side in quite a few aspects. It's just getting that full picture together where they're still lacking. That's leading to so many losses here at the major. As you were saying, it's probably going to take a few more months for this team to try and get themselves together as they lead towards SI as well, as it's just not looking like a good tournament for them. Keep in mind, though, again, only about halfway through the group, so depending on how the remainder of their games go, as well as how their opponents continue to play, there is still that chance for them to hopefully try and rebound here towards the tail end of the groups. They're not fully eliminated just as of yet here. With that said, though, in a moment here, we're going to go ahead and get the groups up on the screen, see where exactly DarkZero, as well as SANDBOX, now sit on the inside of this group. And it is going to actually leave SANDBOX in 3rd place in a 3-way tie with Team 1 and Vitality. DarkZero far at the bottom.
Head-to-heads are going to be everything, and we spoke about this outcome. We said if Vitality can come back, then it would be a 3-way tie. That's exactly what we've got with 3 games still to play, which is when I think about it for DarkZero, I think their major's already done and dusted here. They've played half their games. They have not got a single point. For them to be able to fight back and get top 2 here, well, Vitality and Team 1, for example, have to beat SANDBOX to stay in those first 2 spots. That means DarkZero need to win all 3 games, have round advantage, and have the head-to-heads. I simply do not see that happening at this point. It is not like mathematically impossible, but it is very close to being that.
Yeah, absolutely the case here. It's certainly looking rough, to say the least, and like you said, while it's not a mathematical impossibility, it's somewhat of a logical one. So we'll have to hope, for DarkZero's sake, that some of these other teams, such as Team 1 and Vitality, maybe even SANDBOX, falter off in the final play here today, as well as tomorrow, as they try to look for a chance to rebound. We can see over there in Group A as well, just a quick update on that. Still a leading position for Rogue now after their recent victory. FaZe Clan still in a good position with 6 points, 2 ahead of the Chiefs, who gained 3 for their victory over Oxygen, who still sits with 1 at this point.
As we said, it's not a good time to be an NA fan, an NA player, an NA caster at this point, John. Things are looking miserable. 1 in 10 games, there is work to do. We are now at that stage where after the next 2 games, we are officially halfway through the group stage. If you're still sat at the bottom with no wins, there's a fair chance you're not going to find a win in the second half of today. That only leaves tomorrow to recover things, and by then, it's too late. Teams have got too many points. They're in that 1st and 2nd place secure. We need to see NA teams win in these next 2 games. Otherwise, it's miserable.
Well, we're going to be finding out soon as Space Station is up next. Stick around, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll have that game coming up in just a few minutes.